Story. Nami yawned and stretched, and Luffy slid her down from his back, setting her gently on the ground. She froze and looked between the two men and Luffy. "We're not lost, are we, Captain? I gave you pretty clear instructions," she scolded. "No, this is the spot," Luffy chuckled, grinning at her. At that moment, the front doors burst open and a group stepped through, looking out of breath. "So sorry to keep you waiting," said an elderly man. "This phase of the game is designed to test the captain's strength. You have one night in Shanty Town to rest, eat and prepare. Tomorrow, you begin your match. However, the two of you split up here and will not see each other until tomorrow morning." "Huh!" exclaimed Nami, looking horrified. "You're going to separate us?" Luffy didn't seem to mind. He was still grinning. A girl about their age stepped towards Nami, smiling. "If you'll come with me, missus, I will show you to your room." Nami glanced at Luffy to see what to do. "Well, see you tomorrow, Nami." "Night," he said, also turning to face her. Seeing that her captain was going to be no help, she sighed and followed the girl as she turned and walked through the giant gate. Luffy was left behind with the original group. "Hello, sir," the elderly man said. "You will call me Sensei. I am in charge of your preparations. This phase of the game is fairly simple. You will fight 10 creatures of 10 different levels in that arena there," the man said, pointing to the giant stadium. "You have tonight to relax and tomorrow morning to prepare. We will now show you to your hotel room. Please follow us," he explained. Luffy didn't really get it, but he knew it was a fighting game, so he was perfectly content to do what he was told. He grinned and nodded. "All right, old man," he said. The man promptly threw him to the ground. "I told you, it's Sensei," he scolded. Sorry." Luffy whined from the ground. He got up, grinning again, and followed the man. Zoro and Sanji were fighting again. Their challenge was not much. They were locked in a room full of wild animals, but it was something that the two of them were completely used to, so they just ignored the threat. Instead, they started harassing each other for how unfortunate they were to be stuck with the other person. Eventually the two ran out of ways to verbally assault each other and began to fight. "I'm sick of your cockiness," Sanji cried as he lunged in for an attack. "Oh yeah," Zoro responded, blocking the hit and throwing in an attack of his own. "Well, I'm tired of your shitty face." Behind them, the giant spider crept closer. "Well, I am tired of your stupid green hair. You're one to talk with your idiotic eyebrows." The spider lunged for an attack and the two turned at the exact same time. "Your sneaking is getting annoying. Shut up," they both bellowed as they beat the poor creature to a pulp. From a building a few blocks down, the game masters watched the two through secret cameras, their jaws on the ground. Robin stood frozen in place, staring at Usopp and Chopper as they dangled in front of her. Turns out, the subjects that the little boy had mentioned were the two of them, and they weren't exactly loving it. Below them was a desk where two masked figures sat facing Robin. "Welcome," one of them said. "It was impossible to tell which. Please select your first subject," another added. "Promoted stories. You'll also like A Pirate with One Punch." 26.6K1K. One Piece XOPM. Reader. And quat, YN and quat. Degree, degree, degree. Filled circle, hollow circle degree. Degree, degree. Let me help you. A Luffy x Nami fanfic. 209K 2.5K. After Luffy's battle with Doflamingo at Dressrosa, Luffy is now once again reunited with Sabo. Reuniting with Sabo somehow made Luffy remember about Ace and Hadaryok. The Heart and Soul of Monkey D. Luffy. 1p. 1.2k60. This story follows Luffy after a fateful encounter with a seemingly ordinary 18-year-old girl named Arya. Tragic circumstances lead to Arya joining Luffy's ragtag pirate. A second chance One Piece fanfiction. 384K 8.8K. Complete. Finally, after years of fighting, Monkey D. Luffy arrives at Lawtail and becomes Pirate King. But, he has lost a lot to get here. All of his friends are Dia. One Piece. The alternative revision. 1.2K30. The story will be changed but in future. Still the storyline same just bit changed since there will be character insert into the story changing the timeline disclaimer. I need you more, Luffy x Nami. 20.4K 297. In the wake of their new victory in Wano, time spilled into the hands of Luffy and Nami. Recognition of their silent feelings wailed in their hearts like aches, kraken. One Piece Anime. 5.9K30. In this story, it will be about a girl who lost her brother when she was little and was taken in by a young boy named Luffy. A boy who said he would become king of the P. Robin stood frozen where she was, unsure of what was going on. She had to take a quiz, and if she lost, her friends would be killed. What was she meant to do? She took a deep breath and calmed herself to her usual emotionless demeanor before walking over to Chopper, who was on the left, and pulling herself up a seat. The masked figure on the left stepped forwards and sat down opposite her. Are you ready? They asked. Robin nodded. Luffy stood in the doorway to his new room, awe embedded on his face. All right, he cheered, running to bounce on the bed, laughing. His minders watched him with a strange look somewhere between concern and confusion, but left him to it. The second they left, Luffy flopped down on his back and sighed. This was exactly what he had been dreading. Without meaning to, the game masters had given Luffy the hardest challenge they could. Being stuck, alone, with his thoughts. Familiar feelings began to worm their way into his head, alone with a string of nasty thoughts. Luffy did his best to ignore them, but he knew it was no use. He had to get out of there before he broke down. His first thought was to find his navigator. Nami was sitting on her new bed, staring off into space. She had just had a nice, relaxing bath, but could not shake her anxiety. At first, when the game masters had announced that they were going to be split up, she had worried for her own safety. Without her captain around to protect her like in the sea of grass, she was completely defenseless. Well, not completely. Her eyes drifted to her Klimatak which was sitting on her bedside table. After the girl had dropped her off and showed her her wardrobe, she had been left alone. This suited her just fine, but she knew that if the same thing were to happen to her captain, he would start thinking bad thoughts. She knew he hated being alone, and completely understood why. She stood up, deciding to go and check on him, but then sat down again, realizing that she had no idea where the game masters had shipped him off to. Her resolve solidified when she realized that if Luffy were in her position, he wouldn't even hesitate to tear the entire place down searching for any one of his friends. She sighed and stood up, grabbing her Klimatak for good measure and heading out of the room. The girl had told her meals came at 6, and it was currently 4. She had 2 hours. Sanji and Zoro bickered for hours, until, eventually, the two of them tired themselves out and fell asleep. At this point, none of the beasts in the forests went anywhere near the pair, mortified by their anger. The game masters had not fed them in a while, and they preferred human meat best, but they were making do with eating each other. Smart animals. The doors cracked open and a man stepped through. Hey, you two, he said, hoping to wake them up. He had no need. The two men had been awake the second the door opened. Upon hearing the human voice, they were on their feet and ready to fight in an instant. The man paled at their display of strength, but stayed where he was. What do you want? Zoro growled, relaxing when he realized that the man posed no threat to them. He slid back down the tree he was resting on and crossed one leg over the other with his hands behind his head. I was instructed to tell you that you have beaten the game. The game masters see that there is no point in keeping you here, and have given you two options. You can watch your captains fight, or watch the battle of wits. The man sputtered, sounding nervous. Well, that's obvious, Zoro said, glaring at the cook. They both spoke at the same time. We watch the captain. We watch Robin. The two glowered at each other. Why the hell would we watch the captain? Sanji snapped at Zoro, who jumped up to get into the chef's space. Well, it's better than watching a mind game, isn't it? At least there would be some action. Yeah, action we've already seen hundreds of times. If Luffy finds his challenge as easy as we found ours, it'll be a bore. They both turned to the poor man who was trying to sneak back out. You, they both called. Tell this idiot that I'm right. The man watched the two fuming monsters before him, completely caught off guard by their attempt to get him to pick sides. Well, he stammered, completely unsure what to do. Luckily for him, the boys had gotten into another argument about who had copied who and completely forgotten about his existence. He took his opportunity and hurriedly left the room. Now look what you've done, shitty cook. Our ticket out of this shithole just left. And how is that my fault exactly, you moss head? Who are you calling a moss head? Curly brows? Do you want to fight? As if you can beat me, you sorry excuse for a swordsman. The two of them quickly forgot about the man's question and once again started to fight. Robin was part way through her first quiz. Chopper hadn't moved from his spot suspended above certain death. Both him and Usopp were watching Robin with such an intense stare it would have been enough to unnerve most people. But Robin kept her cool, answering the questions without a moment's hesitation. Luckily, the questions were all around her area of expertise, history and ruins. There were other things in there, but nothing that was completely new to Robin. It had been about half an hour since the beginning of the game, when the group had been split up. Last question. The masked person sang. Who wrote the book called Rainbow Mist? Robin was taken aback. Ordinarily, nobody other than her would have known the answer to this question. The author was not mentioned in the book, but she had met him in person. Rapa Nui Pasqua. She answered. The person, despite being masked, looked shocked. How do you know this? She asked, pulling her mask off to reveal the face of a middle-aged woman. Well, when you travel with a pirate like my captain, you meet all sorts of people. Robin said with a small smile. We've actually been into the rainbow mist, isn't that right, Chopper? She said. Above her, the small reindeer nodded. The women stood, bowed to Robin, and then began to lower Chopper back down. Robin reached out and grabbed him while she dangled there and he clung to her like a newborn baby. You're amazing, Robin, he sniffed. Robin just laughed and headed to the next station, sitting down again but this time with the small reindeer in her lap. Where stories live. Discover now.